Iran has unveiled an underground missile facility near the strategic shipping Strait of Hormuz amid tension with the US and Israel. US President Trump has just tweeted saying he won't attend Joe Biden's inauguration as calls are intensifying for the 25th Amendment to be invoked to remove him from office following this week's deadly riots in the Capitol. And Israel is now under a full nationwide lockdown to cope with spiralling coronavirus cases, with the Prime Minister vowing that everyone in Israel will be vaccinated by the end of March. Hello, I'm Sarah Coates. Thanks for joining me here on the news desk. Let's begin with the chaos which erupted in Washington over the last few days after pro-Trump supporters, who are now being referred to as domestic terrorists, stormed the Capitol, with law enforcement failing to control the situation. Outgoing President Trump has just 13 days left in office after Congress confirmed Joe Biden's win, which then led to the violence at the Capitol. Many are now calling for the 25th Amendment to come into play, which would see Trump deemed unfit for office and removed from the White House early. The president, though, seemingly trying to avert that situation, addressing the country earlier today.
I would like to begin by addressing the heinous attack on the United States Capitol. Like all Americans, I am outraged by the violence, lawlessness, and mayhem. I immediately deployed the National Guard and federal law enforcement to secure the building and expel the intruders. America is and must always be a nation of law and order. The demonstrators who infiltrated the Capitol have defiled the seat of American democracy. To those who engaged in the acts of violence and destruction, you do not represent our country. And to those who broke the law, you will pay. We have just been through an intense election and emotions are high, but now tempers must be cooled and calm restored.
And to talk about these ongoing developments there in Washington, let's bring in Dave Levinthal, who is a senior Washington correspondent for Business Insider, and our senior US correspondent, Mike Wagenheim there. Dave, thanks for coming on. I'd like to start with you. Truly shocking scenes we've been seeing playing out there in the US. Tell me, what can we expect, if anything, to happen to these people who stormed the Capitol in terms of punishment?
There's a number of different avenues that federal and local law enforcement and prosecutors are going to have at their disposal. In fact, we spent a great deal of time yesterday looking through U.S. code to try to determine what federal laws possibly could have been broken. Well, there's more than a dozen of them that at the federal level specifically could apply, from the very obvious trespassing, destruction of property, to the arcane sedition, rioting, rebellion. So whether prosecutors use all of those tools remains to be seen, but we already know that they are going after these rioters and people who attack the U.S. Capitol in a very serious way, and it could be dozens, if not hundreds, of people who ultimately get arrested. And
certainly a lot of CCTV cameras there to catch these people who stormed the Capitol. And Mike, let's come to you now. What is the very latest we're hearing with this push to invoke the 25th Amendment?
Well, Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, Sarah, has basically laid out an ultimatum that the 25th Amendment is to be invoked by Vice President Mike Pence and a majority of what remains of the cabinet, or else the House will proceed with impeachment as soon as possible. The Assistant House Speaker says it could be by the middle of next week, though obviously with the number of days dwindling down, the less impact that could potentially have. Extraordinary development, though, at least in my opinion. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi releasing a message to House colleagues saying that she reached out to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, to ask about what precautions could be taken to prevent Donald Trump from initiating military hostilities and accessing the nuclear codes. Now, there's been no response by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff as to what exactly he may have offered, if anything at all, but the fact that that's being broadcast around the world right now to America's enemies, that maybe the president's options may be limited, is quite extraordinary. By the way, also extraordinary, America's milquetoast neighbor to the north, Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, laying the blame directly at the feet of President Trump for the riots at the Capitol, saying that the current president and other politicians are responsible. Amazing that the two closest allies in America and Canada now, with Trudeau going directly after President Trump, this thing having global ramifications.
And Dave, tell me, what's happening with all these conservatives? We are hearing, and we do know, that a lot of people are abandoning Trump. They don't want to be aligned with him during this time of crisis. What are you hearing from conservatives there in the US?
Oh, there are a number who are abandoning President Trump at the same time when some are standing by him. There are some very high-profile resignations that have come from the White House and two members of President Trump's cabinet. There could be more who have resigned. Betsy DeVos, the education secretary, and also Elaine Chao, his longtime transportation secretary. So you see a lot of Republicans who are trying to move away from the president as much as they possibly can, even though they have been longtime stalwart supporters of him during his 4 years in his first term and now only term in office.
And Mike, let's come back to you. We do know now Trump tweeting a couple of hours ago saying that he will not attend Joe Biden's inauguration. What do you make of that? And when was the last time something like this happened?
It's been a while, but it's certainly not unprecedented. However, it's been tradition, at least in modern history, that the sitting president would attend the inauguration of his successor. Not at all surprising. Trump has other options. He can go to his winter home, which will become his new home at Mar-a-Lago down in Florida. There were some rumors he was going to take off to Scotland, to one of his golf clubs there. Scotland, however, nixed the idea because of coronavirus restrictions and foreigners entering the country. It's probably best for everyone at this point. I don't think Trump wants to be a part of the pomp and circumstance and have the visuals of him handing off power when he's been against it for so long. I don't think Joe Biden particularly wants it. It does open up an opportunity for Mike Pence, obviously, future political ambitions for him to be the responsible adult in the room and represent the current administration at the inauguration as power is handed over on January 20th.
And Dave, let's now go to this backlash regarding the treatment of these what are being called domestic terrorists compared to the Black Lives Matter movement, of course, which took place during summer. Can we expect a transparent investigation to happen to this very, very different style of policing there regarding these people who were there standing on the steps of the Capitol, letting these people in?
Democratic lawmakers and to a lesser extent Republican lawmakers are going to demand it. So yes, you can expect that there is going to be a massive investigation, particularly into the response of the U.S. Capitol Police Department, which is the primary law enforcement agency that goes and protects the U.S. Capitol grounds where Congress, the House, and the Senate meet. The chief of that police force is already going to be resigning. There are going to likely be other calls for massive investigations into what happened there, and also to the situation which involved the U.S. National Guard, which is a military force that can come in for domestic purposes to protect property, to quell riots and whatnot, in the very, very slow response, relatively speaking, that happened during the several hours of violence that took place in and around the U.S. Capitol building.
And Dave, just fairly briefly, we've got about a minute left. How do you see this last fortnight sort of playing out for both Trump and Biden? It's going to be a pretty tough task for Biden. They're coming into this role now with the sort of, let's say, mess that Trump's left behind.
Unpredictable, chaotic, dramatic, whatever word you want to use is probably going to be applicable to these less than 2 weeks before Joe Biden puts his hand up in the air and on the Bible and swears his oath of office. So expect the unexpected. To use a cliche, because that's what we've been getting. And Donald Trump, he's going to be the one ultimately who's going to determine how unpredictable this is going to be. He is still the president of the United States. He doesn't appear to be going anywhere of his own volition. So as a result of that, there is going to be a lot to happen over these next couple of weeks until Joe Biden ultimately becomes president.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Dave Levinthal, Mike Wagenheim, appreciate you both coming on. Thank you so much. And we do need to go out for a short break. Plenty more when we get back. Stay with us.